Welcome to this new Tech Captains episode. So today with Gareth Thomas, we were lucky to welcome Janet Maldonado, who is head of engineering at BIX, the digital labs of Boehringer Ingelheim, the massive pharmaceutical company that nobody knows how to pronounce. Uh, and Janet has been in tech for the past 15 years with a career that brought her from Mexico to Germany with a stopover in the US. So, Janet, before we go deeper into your impressive track record, and we will get there, can you just tell us more about BIX?
Definitely. VIX is the digital lab of Boehringer Ingelheim. Actually, it was created a few years ago, around 2017, because as you know, Boehringer Ingelheim is a pharmaceutical company. And of course, they wanted to explore about
Yeah.
disruptive areas, get into software engineering and disruptive businesses. Yeah.
Okay. And how many people work at BIX Labs?
Well, we have been growing a lot. When it started, we opened the first lab within Ingelheim, which is the headquarters of Boehringer Ingelheim in Germany.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago, we opened a second lab in Shanghai. By now, we have more than 90 people.
Oh, wow. And can you give us an insight about some of the projects you work on?
Well, I cannot give insights about everything, but I can give insights about what is already public.
Yeah.
um, and definitely, I mean, we are so interested in creating solutions that will bring more health to humans and animals. So in the end, we work in a very broad sense of different digital products, either for internal use, especially for those who will help us in identifying new drugs in the discovery and using AI, machine learning, or even large language models. But we also work on digital products that are for externally facing patients, healthcare providers, or even for veterinarians or pet owners. So one of the applications that
Yeah.
we already launched is in China. It's called Consanas Cloud, where Boehringer
Okay.
Ingelheim also created a hospital, rehabilitation hospital, because in China we have a huge problem with stroke patients. And the amount of people who receive rehabilitation after they are checking in a hospital is very, very low. So we saw an opportunity here to use AI and some algorithms in order to support those patients rehabilitate.
Well, that's really interesting. I don't think I know of a pharmaceutical company that's built a hospital, and this is just focused on treating stroke patients in China. I'm guessing it's not just using your therapies, though, it's using therapies from other companies as well.
Of course, it's using therapies from other companies. In the end, um, Boehringer Ingelheim is also trying to serve the needs of the end customers. And this is something really, really new that was just launched this year, beginning of this year. So we are assessing how this is becoming and developing further. In the end, of course, we have a presence worldwide, and the breadth that we can go into is really, really huge.
Yeah. I'm wondering too, just if it's easier to do that in China than perhaps it might be in Europe or the United States, just from a regulatory standpoint. But it's interesting. I didn't know anyone was doing that, so that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's Janet, I want to say, because obviously a lot of the people who listen to us are in tech themselves at various stage in their career. And what I found very interesting in yours is that you started as a front-end engineer in Guadalajara, and now you head of engineering in a very big company. You worked in the Bay Area in San Francisco. You worked in Texas also, I believe. Now you're in Germany. What would be interesting is to see, like, did you keep moving around the world for your career, or was it a byproduct of your life, or is it something you found important to evolve and go up the ladder in your career, or what can you tell us about that?
Well, I can recall even from childhood. When I was 11 years old, I told my dad, "Hey, Dad, when I'm grown up, I will be living very far away." So I was some
Yeah.
sort preparing him. um, but in the end, of course, I went to university in Mexico, and I was always interested, in becoming an engineer, even though at that time I didn't have a computer. But then when I decided which kind of engineering to go to, I thought, oh, computers sounds like the future. I'll go there. um,
Yeah.
and you know, when I went to university, I always wanted to live in Guadalajara in Mexico because it was recognized as the Silicon Valley of Mexico. So I thought
Okay.
I would create, some career development in that area. So I went there. But always I had in mind, look, the best for an engineer, a software engineer, will be to go one day to the Silicon Valley and work for the big tech and be there in this hub. So I also did. However, when I was there, it was impressive, super amazing place to be and to see. But
Hmm.
I didn't want to stay there for a long time. I wanted to just see, learn, and then wanted to do something more for my family and my kids because I'm a mother of two. And thinking
Okay.
more long term, Germany and Europe is actually a great place to be.
And would you give any specific advice for younger people in tech who are maybe developer, who want to get head of engineering, or who do not want, or people who are developer now and they want to involve in the career but they don't want to have a management role but still have some sort of evolution?
I mean, this is one of the topics you will face at some point in your career, right? Because when you are an engineer, of course, it's not so easy to gain the hard skills. However, when time comes, you are facing a decision point when you
Yeah.
really need to look left or right. If you really want to become an engineer and develop that expertise, but if you are also curious about enabling others in you really like people as well, you could also think on a managerial role or path. So it's not so straightforward. And actually, I experienced that it is one of the most difficult things to decide because, as I mentioned, it takes a while to generate the hard skill as an engineer. And many of the engineers, which I know and I have worked with, they don't really like to go much into management type of roles. However, it's really interesting. I have done this in the past as well, and once I was a manager and decided, no, 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 I really want to go back into engineering. And having the ability in knowing that it's okay. There is no straight path. It's okay to go back and say, hey, I really want to do engineering. And even if you're starting to feel rusty, it's like riding the bike. You will get it again and go again into engineering or into management. Just try.
And your career, looking at it, so you've been I guess a front end engineer, right, up until very recently. I think it was 2 3 years ago you were promoted to head of engineering, and I'm just wondering what have you had to learn or adapt moving into that, where you've been focused on front end. Now I'm guessing you have back end engineers, you have QA teams, you have various other teams reporting to you. What have you had to learn or adapt to into your new role?
Well, it's a very interesting story, and I haven't seen a story like this one before. Because actually, we love our previous head of engineering. I was part of that team, and when he came to the room and said, "Guys, I was supposed to be here for 1 year, and I stayed 3, and I want to move on with my next steps. So I expect you to apply for the role." All of the engineers in the room, we were like looking into each other, and one of them said, hey, why don't we run a nomination process? And I said, what a great idea. Sure, I will create something where you can anonymously nominate, because I had 2 engineers who I wanted to nominate in my mind. So we started nominating, and to my surprise, I also came nominated in this process, and we started even discussing within the team, hey, you apply. No, you apply. Hey, if you apply, I support you. And people already supporting me a lot, and recognizing that I had the trust from the team helped me a lot into say, okay, I have done this in the past. If I don't like it, I can always go back to engineering. So I applied, I did, and I already had the trust from the team. So in the end, we might tend to believe that for going into a leadership role, we need to know it all, but it's not true. We need to have the people, and we need to listen to the people, and to have your multiple right hands in order to create things.
I think what you're saying is that the different types of engineering, whether the back end or front end, are slightly irrelevant, but having the trust of the team that you will help them and you'll enable them to make the right decision is more important. I think that's what you're saying, right?
Exactly.
The type of industries and companies you worked at, obviously it was always the tech team, whether it was a tech company or not, but from what I've seen, they were very different. Like you in health tech now, but you were at Experian before, which is like credit score, etc. So what was that a choice? Like were you always more interested into the role and the technology or more into the industry? Like what was really, how did you make your choices there?
Actually, when I was in university, I hated programming, to be clear.
Okay.
But I hated it because when you are learning it, it was not very pretty, not visual. So it was, hey, let's create this console type of, software, and then you needed to print line a lot of underscores in order to make a line. And to me, that was
Yeah, I
ugly,
see what you mean.
ugly. But then when I got into web development, and I saw, okay, we can create interactivity, and I understood I'm more of a visual type of engineer who really wants to create things. So I stick into this area. However, of course, I work in many industries, but it was a time when I worked for the first time in healthcare where I identified, look, I'm creating software which is helping humans heal, which is helping physicians treat better patients. Then I identified, say, look, I only have 3 industries where I want to work. Either is healthcare,
Hmm.
education, or something social, environmental, because of
And
the purpose and the meaning. Yeah.
we have a tradition in the podcast that the guest introduces a book they really like. So you send a number of books, which shows you are a very eager reader. And one that caught my eye in your list was The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick, because I read it myself, I think almost 10 years ago. And it's a very short book that's very practical, very straight to the point, with the premises that if you go tell your mom about an idea you have for a company, she will say it's amazing, my son, my daughter, like you're such a genius, just do it. But that's not client's validation or user validation. So can you tell us more about what you really liked in that book?
I really like the approach and how easy it was to digest and so straightforward, as you mentioned. Um, as an engineer as well, many times, of course, we like to create things and to build things, and it's really common that we have a product owner, a product manager, and hey, let's go all in and let's ship this and
Yeah.
let's ship that. And yeah, we can create, let's do it, ship it. However, I really like this type of content and books because there is no value in building and building things that no one will use or no one wants, and how to really focus and how to approach speaking to customers and identifying what are actually the needs that they have and what are the problems that we're solving.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you use it into your day-to-day work, like as head of engineering, because you're not the product team that necessarily directly speaks the to the users?
I mean, I use it as well with when I coach my engineers. I always try to say, guys, seriously, we really need to identify what is the value, and not necessarily that I work directly in each of the products
Mm-hmm.
we build, because we are not building just one product. We can create multiple products, and we're trying to find what are the most valuable ones. And by doing that, I also have to engage with a lot of stakeholders and trying always to identify, hey, but what is the value for the company? What is the value for the end customer? In what problems are we actually fixing? You know? But in the end, of
Yeah.
course, within our teams, we also have UX researchers that they are all into doing the groundwork. Yeah.
So, just talking about this process, then, do you have any tips for fast prototyping? Because I mean, I saw, I think in one of your something that I saw you'd written, or that one of your talks. I watched a couple of your talks. You were talking about the importance of prototyping. I mean, how do you do that quickly? And I mean, are things like low code a good answer? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we like to leave this decision to our teams, right? And it might depend on what type of product we are speaking, because in the end, at Boehringer Ingelheim, we also create products that are for internal use that might more tend to be a pipeline or a model training. But if we are speaking for a user interface, of course, now there are tons of tools, and there are as well multiple frameworks that you can put in. Our teams as well use Figma and create rapid prototypes there, which are low fidelity, or if we want to go more higher fidelity, now the breadth of tools and AI generations are plenty.
Definitely. And then yeah, just talking about sort of framework. So I think you've been a champion for Angular and stuff like that. I saw. I mean, if you look at front end development, right? We went from static pages to jQuery to framework, single page apps, progressive, all of that. It's been I mean, huge shifts front end, and I would actually say that probably in many ways bigger than in back end in sort of fundamental changes. We now have server side rendering. I was reading also micro front ends are a thing. How have you kept up with these changes with the role that you've had? And what do you think is the next? What do you think is the next big thing? What's the next big thing?
Of course, it's not easy. That's the magic of the world, and the beauty of this type of roles, because even though it's very similar, and you can grasp, that the fundamentals will help you in any of the frameworks or new tools that comes, it's rapidly evolving. I remember as well, I was in the times when there was not even HTML5, and we were doing, Flash and
Yeah.
the Flash player back in the days. So, of course, sometimes there are the times when big changes come, and it's heartbreaking. Sometimes you could, because you invest time and you know how to use the technology, and then now we have HTML5 and all these frameworks, and
Everything's
everything
changed.
has changed.
Yeah.
And from time to time,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
expect new changes, and that's the beauty in the interesting part, right? That is not like, oh, I learned this and I know it all. No, it will change, and it's better to be open and adaptable in order to be always learning and trying.
So what do you
And
think is next? What do you think is the next big thing? Are there any sort of cutting edge things that you're using?
I don't have a magic ball, but I of course I can imagine that a lot of the work is even now, sped up by using of AI tools, a lot of low code. However, I still believe that it will take more time for this to become mature. Or if I believe, hey, will developers will entirely be replaced by AI? Who has the answer. However, not in the in the short term. I know that uh, it might happen that we will have to shift into the next frontiers.
Yeah. And then sort of speaking of developers and the development process, I'm just wondering to get your take on code reviews, because you mentioned that specifically in a couple of your roles. And I actually read an interesting article just, I think, last week by a lady called Jo Krosick, who said that they're outdated and that we should be looking instead to, because they destroy the flow, the development flow, and we should be looking instead to doing coaching and pair programming, which actually I'm quite a fan of pair programming. So again, I wonder what your thoughts are on code reviews. I mean, and also we have AI coming with Copilot and all of these things. Are the days of code reviews numbered, do you think?
I believe, I mean, many of our team members also do pair programming, right? And if you are aligning upfront, hey, these are the conventions and this is how we're going to do things, or if they are together, there is not much needing to reviewing every single thing. As well, there are many things like if you are looking at syntactic issues or, conventions, many of the linters and tools can do it for you. In the end, might be as well if developers are used to do that. Well, it's a developer thing. If they want to do it, or if they want to do it in co-creation, then it's just a check.
Janet, just before we conclude this podcast, can you tell us if you in your career if you had any fun fact or horror story that happened that's worth mentioning and that's not classified?
Well, you judge if it's a horror story or if it is funny. It's something that happened to me more than 10 years ago. I was working in a company, and of course, I was one of the few females in the team. There was this day when I was sitting around engineers, and there was one backend engineer who came to me, a very tall one and big guy with glasses. And he was like,
Yeah.
"What are you doing? Front end? JavaScript? HTML, CSS? That's nothing. What's that?" So I looked him in the eye with my poker face, and I said, "Yeah, maybe you are right, but I earn more money than you do." And all the guys started laughing. And as I said, you judge, might be a horror story because, these are the type of things you face as well as being a female and doing something that maybe they are
Yeah.
not used to. But on the other hand, you really need to be tough and reply back and say, this was the first and last time he told me anything like that.
No, but also for front end developers, and I'll finish on this, is that they often look done also by other techies, but I think the front end actually have it much harder because you have programming, you have all
Definitely.
those packages,
Yeah.
plus you have the HTML, the CSS, and you don't know which platform your code is going to run on. So,
You really need to love it.
so my hat to
Yeah.
Yeah. And not only
perfect.
that, you're
Thank
always
you.
getting SEO people breathing down your neck, wanting it to be as fast as possible. It's never fast enough for Google for you. I mean, yeah, I think front end's the worst place to be honest with you. So I would agree.
I love it, but I mean, it's all about preference, right?
I think thank you, Janet, for your time and being with us today. And
Thank you so much.
to anyone listening, we will be back in 2 weeks. Thank you.